Can everyone hear me okay? We're going to start the meeting now and the presentation by MAPC. If we need a microphone, we have one, but can everyone hear me all right? Okay. So again, coffee and water in the back room. Just over a year ago, the Board of Selectmen really encouraged the planning board to get going on a revised, updated master plan process. In discussions with Chris Sr., the town manager, we kind of kicked around a process, a starting process called planning for the plan, or we called it phase one. One of the questions that we need to ask as a town, without jumping into the whole revised, updated, new master plan, what were the big questions that we didn't know we needed to ask? So we got a small assignment from town meeting, a vote on funding for this phase one project, and engaged the Metropolitan Area Planning Council's team of planners and engineers and experts and that was about I think January of last year. We had a number of sort of planning meetings with the MAPC. These were dedicated, single issue planning board meetings where we talked about how do we accumulate information, how do we gain perspectives, and turn that into something that's meaningful. In addition, we had a visioning session back in March, which was here, which Steve is going to go into a little bit. And then finally, we put together a survey that ran through the summer until we had just over 10% of the what was the number of registered voters. We had respondents that was in that number. That's what we were shooting for, and that wound down in late August, early September. So we have an hour to talk about this, the status of the master plan, phase one. We're going to break it down into a couple of sections. The first, Steve is going to be doing the presentation. He has a presentation put together. His copy's over there. The first session is the meetings that we had, the visioning session and the survey. It's going to go into that, and then we'll want to have questions about that part of the process. Then Steve's going to go into the strengths, and then we'll take a quick break, see if there's any questions on that. The challenges section, finally the opportunities, and then we'll do some kind of a wrap up. But we will try and stick to our 1 hour meeting. Since we started a little bit late, we can go over a little bit. That'd be fine. If there are any specific questions during in the middle of the presentation and not the stopping point, I'd say feel free to get my attention. If it makes sense, then we can go in that, take a look, see what you have that may be relevant for that particular moment. This is a planning board meeting because we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3 members of the planning board. So you can defer to me for any particular questions and direct, since it's a small group, direct them to Steve as well. So without any further ado, Steve Winter from the MAPC.
Mark, I think I may use the microphone. I don't have a basso profundo like you do, so I may have to use this. There are handouts on the table, and in fact, there's a handout of the PowerPoint that we're going to look at. There's a handout of the charts that we got from the survey, and the charts. The reason you have that in a handout as well as in the PowerPoint is because we printed out the full answers that people were the full questions that people were responding to, and we couldn't print those out at first. The yellow sheet that you have is also from the survey, and it's about top 10 things we want to preserve, keep forever, top 10 things we'd like to change. And these are a abridged versions where we've taken out the duplicates, of which there were many. And then we've also got a copy of the 2004 and 2010, the 2004 master plan and the 2010 open space plan, just the recommendations. So you can read the recommendations and see if we've made the progress or done things that we needed to do, that we thought were important in 2004. And the first thing we're going to do is just take a quick look. This is a handout as well, if you'd like to look for it. This is our population now. It's the most updated. It's 2014. It's from the American Fact Finder. And it simply shows the growth from 2010 to 2014. And it lets us look at the other years as well. 50s, 60s, and 70s were years of very high growth. 1930 was a year of very high growth. So, and that was not on the, that was information that I wanted folks to look at. So from the survey, how long have you lived in Cohasset? For the most part, we've got people saying between 6 and 30 years, with the biggest population living in Cohasset from about 11 to 20 years. Although we do span all the way from 1 year to over 70 years. We asked folks, and again, some of these questions are really just to give us a foundation of thinking, a place to put place to hang our hat when we talk about Cohasset. How long do you plan to live in Cohasset? I'm sorry. Can you look back one? Is there one? Yeah, how long? Oh, I'm sorry. How long have you lived? Okay, I'm sorry, let's keep going. How much time do you spend in Cohasset? Most people spend between 80 and 100% of their time. Some people are out and about for less than that, but for the most part, the people who take our survey are people who are here all the time. Our next slide is how long do you think you live in Cohasset? And, you know, overwhelmingly, people said as long as I'm able, as long as I can, as long as I can walk for some of the answers, as long as I can stand, as long as I can breathe. So most people want to stay right here. Next slide is, do you own property or work in Cohasset or live elsewhere? And that's really a resounding no. The people who came to our survey, took our survey, said, you know, we live here. Okay, we'll look at the next slide and we'll start to look at the way that we collected information. It's important to say that everything that I'm talking about is something that the people in Cohasset said. It came from Cohasset. It's citizen sentiment. And one of the ways that we gathered it was we have people take a small piece of paper and write, for instance, here's challenges. And we'll go into what some of those challenges are. Hi, folks, welcome. There's some handouts in the back if you'd like to go look for them. So then we put those up on boards. In this case, this is top 3 issues for Cohasset. That was another part of what we talked about at the event, at the open house. People came and went at their own speed, and that's, I think, the way people like to do it rather than do.
Excuse me, just to add, I think we had about 70 people involved that day. Some of the planning board members were running the stations, and the MAPC brought out half a dozen or more of their expert team event coordinators and planners.
Generally, there's So, again, this is class sentiment, the board, the next slide, and then again, just to look at it, here's somebody filling out
The mic's off again.
this is sad, I may have battery issues, we'll see what happens. There are gremlins.
It's still on.
The under, okay, I'm gonna have to just use my muscle.
All right.
That's not a problem, okay. What we're trying to show you is that
questions about the survey? Yeah, Jack?
Did you folks take a look at the survey that was done for the old, master plan, the 2004 master plan? And did you incorporate any of those questions into this, survey?
We did look at it, and share that, with the MAPC. You know, that when, you know, you did the first pass on the survey list, that survey was one that was mailed out to every, household. And I think it was a 5% return rate.
With 2004 survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those statistics were accumulated, but, you know, to the extent possible, after having read the results from the previous survey, looking at the questions, we wanted to look at it in kind of a fresh view. So we did certainly, pre-select questions from that previous one. For the one going.
If I could though, I'd like to say that in your handout package is the list of recommendations from the last master plan and the list of recommendations from the last open space plan. That is really where you're gonna find, if something made it to the recommendations, it meant it was important to everybody. So it meant that's what people were agreeing on that we want to address in the 2004 master plan and in the 2010 open space plan. So if you read those recommendations, that capsulizes the popularity of those issues at that time.
I think it's probably fair to comment that plan was not accepted, it was voted, it was rejected by the planning board by vote for a lot of reasons. There were a lot of good things in that plan. I think most of them we implemented, but the plan itself was not accepted by the town, so, you know.
Yeah, Chuck makes a good point. There was back in 2009, a vote by the planning board, whether the planning board wanted to adopt the 2004 master plan or not. And there was a vote, 2 for, 2 against, and 1 abstained at that time. But just because the planning board votes to support or some towns have their master plan voted in at town meeting, but just because it wasn't voted in by the planning board doesn't mean that the master plan isn't valid. It was useful. It was certainly used by the implementation committee. A lot of the things that were valid then, and there's a copy of the implementation results section that you should have by now. Chuck, did you have any follow-up on that vote?
Well, no, I think there were a lot of reasons, and there was a lot of discussion at the time in the board and in the community about that plan, and like I said, I think there were a lot of good things in that plan. I think that the board seriously considered it, and I think most of the things, and I mean, I'll defer to Mr. Moore over here, who was the chairman at the time, who is being, but, you know, that there were a lot of reasons. I don't think we want to go into a discussion now of you know, the pros and cons in the debate, but I just wanted to point out that you know, the board at the time felt that you know, that plan needed some work, you know, in order to prove it, and I'm personally really glad to see that right now we're undertaking another effort, and hopefully we'll do some things that, you know, maybe solve some of the issues we had with the previous one and get a better one this time.
That's a good
So
point,
there
Chuck.
is
Thank you.
ongoing discussion over
What's that,
why
Jack?
the last plan was not approved and how
I guess I'll make a very short one. First of all, just procedurally, the planning board must accept the master plan. It's not up to the board of selectmen, it's not up to town meeting. It's a planning board approval, that's the state law, that's the way it goes. So ultimately, it's got to pass muster with the planning board. That's not our idea, that's just the way it's set forward. But going back to, since it was mentioned that I was chair of the planning board when we did not recommend the old master plan proposal, I think you ought to know there were things in it that were great, but procedurally we felt it was flawed. And it's flawed for the same reason that this presentation, and it's really nice, and as a charrette, it's great, but it's a monkey survey or a survey monkey or whatever you call it, and it has no statistical validity. So when you say, oh
That's your
gosh,
opinion. That's your opinion.
that's my opinion. It
Yeah,
has
understood.
no statistical validity, but I'll stand on that. It doesn't because everyone's saying, gee, it's great, we got 10% or 12% of the people to respond to a survey. Well, that's great, except the only people that respond are the people that have a hot button, that are excited about it. What about the 88% of the people who didn't respond?
Well, that's true, Al.
Well, let me just finish, Clark, and then
Yeah,
I'll
go
sit
ahead.
down and we'll say another word. There were a bunch of people that didn't. Now, everyone talks about the character of Cohasset, how they love it, and no one really can define it, but we all love it. And just maybe the character has evolved because for 200, 300 years there's been no plan, that we just, things evolved. Maybe that's why, maybe not, but just maybe there's an element of that. And if 88% of the people didn't even think enough to respond to the survey, they're saying something. They're saying, I like it the way it is. They're saying, I don't care, whatever they're saying. But that can be addressed if this survey, when you get to the point of actually doing a plan, properly addresses that in a random way that would put some validity. That was why we rejected it the first time.
That's a good point, Al. And I would say, we made an effort to reach out to as many people as who would respond. Certainly, if we left the survey open longer, we might have gotten 15, 20, maybe even 25%. Whereas the first, the 2004 plan had like a 5 or 6% return rate. We were happy with the 10% return because we know people are busy. People, do believe that Cohasset's fine the way it is. Why make a plan? But I can't say statistically that's 88%. The people that are motivated, that get the notice, that want to make a contribution, made it clear. I mean, from the comment section, from the depth of the comments and that level of contribution, it was a half-hour survey. People who did that survey, they made a commitment to the future of Cohasset, and that's why we're all here today. That's why the selectmen, planning board, we've been working on this kind of foundation for a full master plan for a full year. But since we're running over time, Steve, I'd like to turn it back over to you on what were really compelling things, the top 10 things to reduce or eliminate, the top 10 things to preserve as is, and the top 10 things to improve.
Okay, this is from the survey, and this is a
600 and some respondents, is there some indication that, you know, one person, as you said here, made this comment, or 600 people? I just want to understand what the,
Sure. Clark,
How
let me,
good it is.
let
Go
me
ahead.
explain the methodology of that. So, there was many things said. Many of them were duplicates. We grouped the duplicates, we numbered them for strength. This has been said 42 times, this has been said 71 times. We brought those things together, and then we kept looking at them, and we sort of put them into pods, as it were, or places, as it were, where they fit as these large answers, and continuing to use the citizens' terms, these then came to the top of the survey list of the top 10 things. Everybody brought them forward.
Right.
Many mentioned them many times, and then again, they were brought together one last time into these top 10.
Yeah, and we had like over 500, I think, responses to this particular question. A lot of them were similar, and in talking about how to present this, we thought a top 10 was good. I think my communication was top 10 or something that was really compelling. And I think the piping floater falls into the compelling category. But what is interesting is the top 5 really are related to municipal government and how municipal and planning issues that we can do something about into the future. They're all long-range planning issues, but that's what's compelling about this particular question. Want to go on to the next one?
To improve, top 10 things to improve. 3A, access to transportation, access to our harbor, downtown development, parking downtown, roads. There was a lot of comments about the roads. First, traffic issues and traffic that's fast, speeding, but there's also a lot of comments about their potholes, their pieces falling off the edge. It's a rough road, it's a rugged road. And again, school system resources, that Cohasset always came forward saying, our schools are important, we need to resource them properly to improve sidewalks, bike trails, and again, back to the village, overall revitalization of the village. And we'll go to preserve as they are. And of course, this is all the stuff that is astounding about Cohasset. It's an amazing place. It's on the Atlantic Ocean. It has a sense of history. It has a village aesthetic. It feels like a small town. It's got lots of green space. So people are truly aware of this as a hard-won milieu.
And I think everybody in this room gets this. It's not a surprise. What the survey did was confirm what we all already knew, and that's okay. So unless there's any follow-up on these last questions, yeah, Wayne?
Wayne Sacha. Sometimes I think a lot of Cohasset residents do not know that Sandy Beach is not owned by the town of Cohasset. Sandy Beach is owned by the Sandy Beach Association. And 99.9 years ago, a group of people got together, bought it, set up an association to manage it for literally everybody. And all the money that is received by the town of Cohasset on their beach sticker revenue, not a dime of that goes to Sandy Beach. Not a dime. It all goes to the general fund. The only money that Sandy Beach has an opportunity to get is from the residents of Cohasset and elsewhere that want to make donations and to take care of almost $100,000 a year budget that employs all local kids and stuff. So when people talk about restricting Sandy Beach, what they're going to do with Sandy Beach and all this other stuff, they don't even own it. It is owned by an association. And the association ends up having to spend money
talk about the 1850s as if it was a few months ago, and there's a sense of it. So I think people often don't say, well, I need to talk specifically about the historic strength, because they feel like it's really a part of everything. Let's go to the next slide, which is strengths miscellaneous. Peace and quiet, intimate, the people. And there's a spirit of volunteerism, there's community organizations. So these are things that people all felt
this is done as a foundation for a full master plan. Basically, we're learning the questions that we need to ask and putting them and organizing them in some kind of rational way, so we know what to focus on in a interim basis. You know, what would be from a municipal government, planning board, board of selectmen, town manager, what's an emergency that we kind of like, something that's actionable right now as a part of this timeline of process. We get some perspective on that from what the information that NPC has collected and organized for us. So they've got a final report that's going to be organized in the next week or so.
Yes.
That would be used by an impaneled master plan committee as a foundation for putting together an RFP and for a full master plan. So essentially, our process is we've done an initial investigation, we've asked a lot of questions, we've gotten a lot of answers. Those things are organized. Now we have a master plan committee that will be in place to look into the next steps, which is hiring a consultant, to putting together a timeline for a full master plan. All the while keeping in mind that we're moving through time, and the full master plan may take a year or more to complete. But if there's interim steps that we can take in terms of ongoing implementation strategies, information that we've collected from this first phase, those are really going to be important for the master plan committee and the planning board and the selectmen, town manager, to try and understand, so that where the master plan process is present and it's influencing the perspectives and the information that we've gotten from motivated residents is turning into actionable items, improvements, even maybe small scale improvements. So, any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi Glenn, my name is Patrice Bowman, and I'm on the Conservation Commission. So my question is kind of a real basic one that says, what's the, two things, what is, when you do the master plan, is there going to be more solicitation of input? And how do you know what the percentages that's applied here are going to run into the same issue that Mr. Moore addressed with the planning board? Like, do we do all this work and then we go back to the planning board and the planning board will not approve because you've got it based on response rate of under 10% or 10%. So how, looking at this master plan, how are we going to avoid that in this process?
Are we going to be in the same place as we were when we put 2004?
Yeah, or how are we going to work with
Plan
them
together.
to address that up front, so we actually do move forward with something?
And I think, that's something for the master plan committee and the planning board to talk about. If, in terms of how we get information, whether random sampling is even feasible. As Steve brought up, it's a $100,000 thing to do a Nielsen-style survey where you're calling people randomly and you're only going to get a certain percentage of those hits. As a town, I think there may be controversy about the statistical relevancy of people who are interested in improving the town and making a difference with the random sampling of grouchy people that don't care. In a way, there's always going to be, like with technology, there's early adopters, there's everybody in the middle, and then there's a certain percentage of people that will never adopt that technology no matter what. In
So
a
you
way,
don't have
the
to-
master plan is sort of similar. Go ahead.
You don't have to convince me.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, what are you going to put in place? Are you going to get votes from the planning board that's going to say, okay, here's the premise where I'm going for the master plan going forward? Do I have buy-in from the planning board?
Yeah.
And before we start, that this basis is okay to start from?
That seems like a reasonable part of the process, where the planning board in the past wasn't really involved with the 2000 to 2004 master plan development to a great extent. There were meetings, regular meetings with the planning board, but they weren't keenly involved. constant communication. I think, too often in Cohasset, we live in silos. I live in a neighborhood where I can't see any other houses all summer long. I feel like I'm in a silo, sometimes. And I think our committees work in this way sometimes. We work in silos, that there isn't enough kind of cross communication just to address those kinds of things and move forward.
So I just want to say,
Constantly reinventing the same question. Go ahead, Jack.
I don't think we need to, I don't think we want to discount what Charles and Al are saying.
No.
I think we should examine what they're saying about, doing the survey, doing it in a structured way, and then maybe talk about how would the survey be different if we did use statistically valid techniques to run a survey. And I strongly disagree with the $100,000 price tag for, it's much, much cheaper these days. You can probably get it done for 15 or 20.
That sounds great.
Well, I think, quite frankly, you and I could sit down, take the town census, pick 100 random people, and write a letter and send it registered mail and say, here, right? I don't think we need Gallup to do this. I think that it's
That is something that we
pretty
can talk about.
straightforward process that.
That is something we can
Probably
talk about
easier
in
than a
regular
survey.
planning board meetings. So thanks for your perspective, Jack. What's that?
If you want that younger group, you gotta tweet it out,
Yeah, right. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we ask the town manager how he would integrate with this output and any selectmen that are here?
Well, a master plan is the community's vision for where it wants to go. And I think as everyone's pointed out, there's never unanimity, and you should never, you can't, what is the old line, don't lose the good for the perfect. There's gonna be people who disagree, they just are. But this is not about nitpicking down to the very detail of what happens on a particular corner. It's more about general vision and updating techniques and tools to deal with things as you go forward. That's really what it's about. It's about having tools to be able to use going forward. It's not. I've worked with communities that have very strict rules about what color paint you can have and how high your grass must be. And there's other places where Cohasset is much closer to this, where it's kind of like, yeah, do what you want, as long as you don't, set fire to your neighbor's house and do too much damage. The world, the world has changed a little bit, obviously, in regulatory sense and people's tastes. This is a really healthy process. And by the way, I think the people who engage are the people who really are most interested anyway. You really should reach out to people. People have very busy lives. And this is only one aspect of a long process. There's going to be, and there should be, regular meetings and small group meetings that reach out to as many different aspects of the community as possible. But I've watched over the last, how long has it been now?
9 months.
9, 10 months.
Yeah.
There's been an interest. There's been by the way, you see a lot of the same faces because those are the people who are very, very engaged. But there's other people who participated who you wouldn't necessarily have expected. And people are paying attention. There's no question that people are listening. People are definitely paying attention. And as you kick this off, the whole point of this process was to figure out what to talk about. Because the master plan, you can talk about anything. Process. But I think the whole point of this was kind of drill it down a little bit to focus a bit on, and at the end, this is the marching orders, if you want to know what, this is, when this all comes together, it's kind of like, this is where we want to go. We want to keep Cohasset, we want to make the harbor a priority, we want to get 3A to be this. It's a vision, and then it's the job of myself and staff and the elected boards to kind of move in that direction, right? That's the goal of this process.
And reaching consensus on these things and making sure that we do as broad an outreach as possible, so that we're supporting the goals of the community at large and the long-term kind of perspective. Yeah, Kevin.
I think it's also important to remember on a big project like this, it's almost like the NASA program. There's a lot of spin-offs and benefits that come from just having the data collection, the analysis, the community meetings. Ideas and programs come out of that. And I believe some of those who've been around longer than I have on this, in the last one, even though it wasn't adopted, there were a number of zoning and other items that were identified in that master plan that then went on through citizen involvement. Actually, some citizens got together and put them on warrants and implemented them and so forth. So, from my point of view, just the process alone of what we're doing is community building, it's communication, and you'll see spin-offs from this anyways. And so that's, I think, important to keep
some similar techniques to what we've done so far, but with a lot more depth and with a dedicated committee that's working with the planning board and the selectmen.
So are we actually gonna like do a map of the town and maybe talk about very specific ideas along 3A?
Phase
Maybe
the
ideas,
Yeah.
renderings for downtown, I mean, is it gonna get that specific?
What the previous master plan did was had mapping as a part of that, mapping consultant that did that. I would expect that, like the Hingham Harbor plan had actually kind of actionable designs that were a component of that master plan. Actionable, like kind of design configurations that could be, you could do this. And then the town has a sort of vision, they have a sense for what things can look like, and that's an important component of it. Yes, Diane.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Steve's question. I think I'm the in the weeds person all the time, so Kevin answered it very well from above. But from the selectmen's point of view, at this point, the first important thing we're going to be doing is creating this master plan committee.
Yeah, it doesn't
So,
exist yet.
It doesn't exist yet, and I think that's important to say.
Yeah.
And Chris, for his part, as the chief procurement officer, he will ultimately be in charge of the RFP, working obviously with the planning board
Yep.
to RFP for the consulting services that we'll be looking for money at special town
And
meeting
just
for.
to comment if I
Wait a
may
minute,
on that.
Diane, were you done?
So basically, yes, at some point, the Board of Selectmen will be discussing who do we want represented on the committee, solicit applications to that committee, and then naming and forming that committee.
Yeah, to comment on that, if
Go
I may.
ahead. Chuck.
Hi, Diane. So yeah, you're right, there is not a committee yet. So it might be kind of premature to talk about what the committee, the charter is going to do and who's going to be on it. One of the things that personally I feel is it's probably premature to go to the town and ask, I mean, $100,000 is a lot of money. And, I would kind of be uncomfortable with doing that before we had a statement of work, a charter, some deliverables, something like that. So maybe that's best considered, further down the road. One of the biggest strengths that I feel just personally of the town is there are a lot of people in the town that are, active in government or active, around the town, and a lot of strengths, a lot of good knowledge of people that know the town. So I would really like to suggest we strongly consider using internal resources to try to, get to the next phase rather than hire an external consultant. One of the criticism, I guess, I've heard a lot, the post office and the dump and, French memories about the previous effort was it was an external consultant. Somebody came in, charged us a lot of money, didn't really know the town or understand the town, wrote a master plan that we said, well, wait a minute, is seagull, excrement, the most important thing we have? Well, no. So I would hope before we go to the point of allocating, funds, we think really hard about how we want to do this. We might be able to do it for nothing if we get the right volunteers.
Chuck, I appreciate the comment. I think what the planning board did when on maybe a couple of the meetings that you missed were to keep the process going, because I was advocating for just what you're talking about. Like, we don't know everything. We haven't gotten the final report yet. Do we want to go to special town meeting for funding? And I think the planning board and Dave, I don't know if you could chime in on this particular thing. I think we said we want to try and, as a board, we want to try and keep any momentum going as possible. And we think the selectmen and the town manager are encouraging this. So we don't want to lose a funding cycle of 6 months on this. And that was the reason for keeping the kind of the pedal to the metal, the wood in the fire, having this presentation today so that town leaders are up to speed. But Dave, what do you recall from our discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple things. I'm Dave Dryden, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. The Planning Board has voted unanimously among those who were in attendance with a charter for the Master Plan Committee.
which calls for a pretty broad membership. We were trying to limit the number somewhat to a manageable number, just as a practical working item. But I think we're talking about 13 members on this committee with membership from Selectmen, Planning Board, and many other important functioning groups in town already, who will have the responsibility of identifying a member of their group to be on this committee. This process, I think by its very nature, is a very organic one where we're trying to have lots of opportunities for a wide range of people to kind of weigh in and give us their thoughts, their opinions, and so forth. And unlike the visioning session, which is open-ended and a little, there are challenges to understanding numerically what the most important things are, the committee is going to be charged with the responsibility for really drilling down on those specific things and having a better sense of understanding so that they will have their own subcommittees. There will be regular minutes of those meetings. Those minutes will be posted on the town website. There'll be public meetings, so the town members will be invited to attend any of them. So this is a process that's going to engage a lot of people over time. I think we knew that at some point in time there was going to be the need for some funding to help pull this all together into a real and final master plan. And that's why we wanted a placeholder for such funding. I think relatively soon after the planning committee is formed and has met, they will articulate more clearly what the specific charge of that consultant will be. And we'll go
And I don't, my point is we shouldn't go out for funding until we've made that leap, right? I mean,
That's a
I'd
good
rather
point,
hire a
but,
teacher than.
hey Chuck, that's a good point, but we're going in a different direction on that particular issue. Wayne?
I've been in town long enough to know how many times we've done some studies that in fact don't end up going anywhere. And I think one example of something is the probably $200,000 plus or minus that was invested in studying the harbor and downtown village area. For all the things that we like and would like to continue and all this, I think the planning board did a year or two ago, 3 years ago, a great compilation of all that stuff and came up with some great ideas. But that never, the final plan was never done. And in fact, there were great things that came out of it. And the money that was spent was showing what sidewalks should look like, including, putting in brick, putting in bluestone, putting in asphalt, doing this, coming up with lighting examples, with all these different things that today would have made the village, as we're doing more development around the village, it would have started something that when something new was done, you would start using what was proposed. We just went ahead and paved the whole center of town at no cost to the town. We're paying for it in our gas bills, but that was an opportunity to do some of what this plan was. When's the next opportunity going to be? When we did the downtown, we did some things to it, but we didn't do really what the master plan suggested that we did. So it would have provided all the things that I think the majority of the people in town wanted and would look for and would allow things other than real estate offices to go in. It would have solved different issues with parking and other things. So I'm not sure that all the effort that goes into a full master plan of the whole town that's going to include residential, the village, the harbor, 3A, will ever get to a point where you have the approval of all the different actions rather than doing this in somewhat of a piecemeal. Do the village, do 3A, do the zoning as a thing that will then take care of the residential aspect that people are trying to do, the ledge blasting, etc. So I'm just fearful that a year from now, we're going to have a report that we will not, the town in general will not accept. My final comment is, I think that it is worth having some additional sort of results. I was thinking myself as sitting here, if you went to the 2 Stop and Shop and Shaw's and you went there with clipboards with 10 questions with a number of volunteers, and you picked out on a Sunday the most busy shopping day, and you just did, you get 200 or 300 responses, I would imagine, without too much trouble, of some of the key things, and you would be involving people and do this back and forth little thing in some education about what it is that the town is doing. And the young families, you can tell by looking at people, this is an older gentleman, this is an older woman, this is a young person, she's got her baby cash. You really testing it without names and stuff, demographics and stuff, and you would get some great results, I think.
Saturday morning.
That's a good idea.
One day, and you'd come back and say, I had 300 people.
Good
that
point.
think, you know, that's been educated about it, because that would help sell the plane when it is done.
Sure, good point, Wayne. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry, what was your name? I
Patrice
apologize.
Baldwin.
Thank you.
So my question is from a practical perspective. We put together the plan, and I think Ray raises a good point, we haven't done anything. Is there gonna be anything in there that says, okay, this is what people want, this can be accomplished via zoning. Here are zoning laws that are working really well in Marblehead, Lincoln, down the Cape. I mean, is there gonna be any research done by the master plan people that say these are pre-existing? Because I've done that a little bit with conservation, and gone and looked and see what people are doing. If you live in Chatham and you go and try and revise your house, and if you alter more than 15% of your house, it's treated like new construction, and you
Right.
have to meet all the code around new construction. So, that to me was like interesting. So, I mean, is anybody gonna go out and say these are pre-existing things that are being done in other towns that we can adopt, and they've been pretty successful?
We do that, we have a zoning advisory committee, and we do that best practices, research on particular zoning, amendments that, we've been researching on an ongoing basis. Certainly, we don't have a professional town planner here in town.
But could the master plan people do it? I mean, could you add that to the RFP? Because that would be
Certainly.
an actionable item.
And certainly, if we have a professional planner on board, you know, Steve, during this process, has pointed out different kind of best practices that are out there, for certain specific issues. And we would expect that there would be more of that with the full master plan. So we, you know, I think, you know, in some ways, you know, Cohasset was one of the, it was one of the challenges that we had where we're isolated. You know, we kind of have a culture of some isolation that's been a legacy thing, but there's more and more professionals that are getting on boards, that are being involved and understand best practices in their industry and what's related to their particular board. So I think that's going to increase, and we're going to do that more. But thank you for your point.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, why don't we pay somebody to do it for us?
Yeah,
Everybody's
no,
on board,
we,
has a
we,
full-time job.
it would be great. We've talked about having a town planner, at least part-time, that could help keep that professional element and best practices going, but the consultant also is gonna help a committee who can like they can do research on their own. Sometimes that tends to be, and I know from personal experience, it tends to be like kind of a random accumulation of best practices, but it's, but with the committee and a planner and a professional planning group, I think we could really see best practices across the board and incorporate those. So I think it's a great point. Dave, you had
Well, no, I just want to make one point. I need to go, I have another meeting, but
we've run over.
we've run over quite a bit. But I think there are some good suggestions for things that we can do and should be relatively easy to do. Wayne's suggestion for some informal information taking in very public traffic areas. I think it would be very simple to do a randomized survey, and they can be ways of sort of checking the process to say, are the people we're hearing from really representative of that random sample? Are they in sync in any way? On the other hand, I would also say that one of the challenges and the results of democracy is the people who choose to get involved and spend the time and run for office and go to meetings will have a voice that the person who stays home will not have. And in the end, I'm okay with that. I hope this process will be one in which there's a very broad invitation for people to participate, and there are efforts to actually reach out to them in addition to that. But in the end, we're going to have to try to work with the information that we can accumulate over time.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
Is there any other points that haven't been made yet? Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
You know, there's a whole physical piece to this master plan, and there are issues around, for example, where we're going to put a new public safety building if we choose to go forward with public safety. When you start moving the physical pieces of the town, the 13 buildings we have, you end up with all sorts of new problems, and I hope that us do a physical roadmap of what we're gonna do for the town. Like, for example, carve out areas for moderate income housing, if that's where we choose to go, or issues around the harbor, what are we gonna do around the harbor?
What's the best place for moderate income housing?
Right.
So that kind of thing.
So I'm
It's
saying
key.
the master plan may be a really nice way to facilitate, because there's gonna be a lot of
Yeah.
angst around how we do this. I mean, I know Wayne's a big advocate for parking downtown.
Yeah.
Where are we gonna do that? And we don't have a forum for talking about those kind of issues. I think that if we did that alone, we'd be much farther down the road on
Great,
this.
great point. Nice, Terry. I'm sorry, your name is?
Suzanne Marshall. My question has to do with the economic impact. Sure, it sounds great, it's all suggested, and I think this came a few years ago, connecting the harbor to downtown. I think it's connected as it is, where it's got sidewalks, and it's not just a long walk. And if we were to improve facilities around the harbor, what's the cost of that? And how are we
Sure.
going to weigh expenses for the school improvements, which I don't agree with, because I think that's a huge percentage of the town budget as it is.
2/3, yeah.
And therefore, lots of other things that are going unfulfilled, roads, putting in sidewalks. Where's the economic component of all these things?
Yeah, I
In
think
other words, you could decide, I like A more than I like B, but fiscally, B makes more sense.
Sure.
And who does that?
Well, I think there's a balance to that. I mean, you know, in any like zoning change, you're putting value from one property owner to another. Just as an example, you're creating value. It's not a cost to the town per se, but you're creating value in one location. You may be taking it away just by doing the zoning change. But all these things, any changes need to be discussed and understood what the fiscal impact is.
Okay, and that's.
Yeah, it's a real balance. And I know that we have about 400 responses in closing comments, and we'll be posting those on the Cal website. Have a paper copy available.
With this,
But I hear you.
the survey that was done, I noticed that a very high percentage of the respondents were, and lived in the town for 26 and 20 years.
Yeah.
So to me, I interpret that as heavily weighted towards younger families or people with school-age children.
Yeah.
I didn't see anywhere in that survey the age of the respondents.
Right.
And I think that's
I
wrong,
don't think-
because it's an old town.
I don't think we
Yeah.
identified
Population is
that
older
per
than
se.
that.
But that's a good point.
Well, we didn't, the
Thank you.
survey didn't really include demographics in general of the respondents, so it's kind of hard to make,
Important
you know.
though, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's critical in a survey if you
Steve,
really
do you
want
have
to.
any comment on that particular issue? In
No.
terms of prioritizing cost and the economic impact of any, you know, kind of municipal zoning change, that kind of thing.
There are indicators that are out there that we can use. There are projections that we can make, statistical data regression type things.
Yeah.
But
planning board had, this is the first time we've seen this, anybody's seen this, you know, we haven't discussed it as a board, so it provided a lot of information, but we gotta figure out what to do with it. I was kind of looking forward to, or hoping, and maybe surprised I didn't, there was some real issues, I think, that are facing the town, that didn't, you know, show up here, and, you know, sort of my personal top 10 list. One of them, probably the top one, is just preserving, you know, the residential property values we have. We've got to make sure that, which is 93% of our tax base, you know, that we really understand, you know, that why people are here and why people like it here, and the financial impact of that. Excellence in schools came up quite a bit, and I think that's got to be a real high priority. I was sort of surprised there wasn't more about, you know, safety services, the fire, the police, in town. I mean, that's one of the things we're all completely dependent on and maybe take too much for granted, and I'd like to see a lot of energy spent into, you know, figuring out what to do with that. The water and sewer services and costs. You know, if I had to look at maybe the top, you know, maybe contentious issue over the last 10 years here has been, you know, the water bills and the sewering and stuff like that. Critically important, represents huge amounts of money in the town, and we, you know, that, I'm surprised that wasn't in either a question of the survey or any of the responses. You know, 3A corridor, we've all you know, been aware of that for a long time. The building infrastructure, that came up a little bit today. You know, the town hall, or the new town hall, maybe a new fire and police, you know, presence on the other side of it, on 3A or something like that. Controlling taxes. You know, we're 93% residential tax based, so we can say there's a lot of good things we could do, but, you know, I think we got to get to the point of what we can do, right, to be able to prioritize. And the final one, which, you know, may not be a master planning issue itself, to me, but certainly impacts what we do, is the huge town debt we have in terms of, you know, the water and sewer department and stuff, and also the retirement funds we have. And so that kind of puts some bounds on what the town can afford. So hopefully those all can be taken into account as we go forward.
Thank you for those points, Chuck. We're gonna have a meeting that focuses on master plan issues coming up this Wednesday as a part of our regular planning board. It's a follow-up on this session, but also, you know, as a bridge between what's gonna be coming up at special town meeting. So again, I'd like to, go ahead, Diane.
I just want to jump on what Chuck said. I mean, a lot of what he's talking about are municipal services, and I think that if anything, I mean, this, in the visioning session, which led to the questions, I think it was very much focused more on character, on development, on that kind of thing. But to your point, I think that the best part about going through these procedures and processes is that we have an opportunity to do that, and I definitely think a municipal services survey is something that, you know, the town, the board of selectmen, or whatever, should talk about, because that is where the financial bucket is for all of these ultimate decisions. When we get the master plan and it recommends that the town look at doing certain things, then it's going to be incumbent on the town, based on the priorities for municipal services, to determine what kind of financing or financial